How did you become involved with this and why?
The first contact I had was from Sandra. She asked me if I'd be willing to, and I think her words were to investigate her conduct, uh, pretty much kind of on behalf of, say, the State DA's Association. And I said that I would do that. And then very soon after that, Jennifer, the governor announced that she was referring this to the Prosecutorial Conduct Commission, which is brand new. In fact, I don't think they've actually set up operations yet. But when the governor did that, I notified Sandra that I would not interfere with their investigation by conducting a separate investigation. And then several weeks later, I was contacted by the administrative judge who assigned me to adopt a more formal role as special district attorney with the authority to charge Sandra with anything additional if I thought appropriate.
And so, if you can, walk me through how you investigated this on your end.
Well, the first thing, when you say investigate, and it's a fair term, investigate, but there's really not a lot to investigate. It's the whole thing, or I should say 95% of it is on camera. The only thing not on camera is her actually speeding, and she acknowledges that she was speeding. So what the crucial conduct is what happens after Officer Chris Foley arrives at her house, and that's all on tape. So this is not some Sherlock Holmes dogged detective work that has to be done. So I reviewed all the tapes, the transcripts. I spoke to people that I felt it necessary to speak to. Then it was a matter of going to the law books and seeing that if arguably her conduct fit any other crime for which she had not been charged.
And I guess I want to be clear here too, and you were very clear in your letter. You're not looking at the ethical side of things. You are solely looking at the criminal side of things.
That's correct. Unethical conduct is not necessarily criminal conduct. There are a lot of lawyers can be disciplined for non-criminal activity that falls into the unethical range. And, being rude and obnoxious is not a crime. Otherwise, we'd have to build several thousand more prisons in the U.S. So that wasn't my goal, as I understood it from the judge.
Okay, so official misconduct. What burden would have had to have been met, and where did Sandra's situation fall on that line of getting
Yeah,
to
this wasn't a really close call vis-a-vis official misconduct because it requires an act and a benefit. Well, clearly, here you could suggest that the benefit was talking one's way out of a speeding ticket, but verbal actions are not enough for a official misconduct. There has to be an act of some kind, some type of bribery or awarding a government contract or something along those lines.
So would that have had to have been a thing like, hey, if you get me out of this, I can do this for you? Would that have
Yeah,
had to have been clear?
For official misconduct to occur, yes.
Obstructing governmental administration.
Right.
This is where you found that technically, had it been written that day, that might have held weight, but it wasn't. And to go back now, there's some problems there. Could you walk me through sort of how you arrived at that conclusion?
Yeah, I think it's important for the viewers to keep in mind that I'm being asked to review the case several months after the actual conduct. So you have the difficulty of double jeopardy and the difficulty of finality here. And does it really serve a purpose? And I know there's some people that will be listening, Jennifer, that would suggest, Bedford Hills is too good for her, lock her up, throw away the key. And I don't pay attention to that foolishness, nor do I pay attention to the other extreme, namely that DAs can do no wrong. So obstructing governmental administration, like official misconduct, requires an act. The courts have told us that OGA, as we call it, requires a physical act, something that is affirmatively done in a physical way. If she had walked over, slapped the officer's ticket book out of his hand, something outrageous like that, or physically interfered with him, then certainly a charge of OGA would have been justified.
I think when people see her sort of just completely dismiss him, walk into her house, go
Yeah.
put her bag away, that's not enough of a physical act.
The initial reaction by Sandra, and if you don't believe me, you can believe her, was completely inappropriate. She should have pulled over initially. She certainly shouldn't have driven to her house. And when at the house, At that point, she's realizing, she sees that the officer has followed her. Okay, now obviously I was the intended target of his attempt to pull somebody over for speeding. She knows what she should have done at that point, but she didn't. Had she persisted and like just locked herself in the house or something, then you could arguably make a case, not necessarily for OGA, but for resisting arrest.
Was there anything else you considered when watching the video and talking with witnesses?
Well, there's two other things that I went to. One is what's called the Tadashini law, where if you flee from an officer, you can be charged with a misdemeanor or felony, depending on your speed. And that clearly didn't apply here. Webster police, who I would like to add parenthetically, the people in Webster are very lucky. They have a great police department. But one of the captains indicated clearly that this was not a pursuit. The other charges would have been under the V&T law. One of them was suggested 1144 by the arresting officer. That, again, that's the so-called pull-over law, where if you see a trooper pull someone over on the side of the road, you're required to go to the passing lane, and that's not what happened here. And then the final thing is failure to comply with a lawful police device, namely the lights. And I don't know if can't remember off the top of my head if he had his sirens on or not, but certainly failure to respond to the lights could be a separate V&T law. But by virtue of the fact that she pled guilty, you would have a very serious double jeopardy argument.
It's for our viewers who might see this and say, well, is it really fair that someone who knows Sandra and
Right.
someone who does the same job as Sandra and someone who has known her for years did this investigation? How do you answer that?
Well, first of all, it's a very fair question. And there are a limited pool of district attorneys in the state that could have conducted the investigation with a degree of credibility. In other words, you have to have some experience in doing this. I was chairman of the Moreland Commission, so I know what public misfeasance looks like. Believe me, I saw enough to last a career during that experience. If the voters of or the citizens of Monroe County feel that my report is some way deficient, I'm sure they have avenues to them. They can go to the Monroe County executive, but then when you get the bill for $250,000, don't blame me, because I'm 100% certain that any fair-minded, open-minded person is going to look at this and come to the same conclusion that I did. Yep.
This has been such an explosion, this story and this situation sort of worldwide. I mean, was there any part of you that said, no thanks, I don't want any part of this?
No, I'm not one to run away from controversial issues. And I always think, Jennifer, that perspective is very important in one's life. You look at, what problems are you facing today? Well, we have a presidential election coming up in a couple of months. We have all kinds of crises going on throughout the world. At the end of the day, this was a woman with an unbelievably exemplary 3.5-decade career in law enforcement and public service. She probably could have gone into private practice 2 decades ago, been a millionaire sitting on a beach somewhere. She's a cancer survivor. And I know that there's a certain segment of people that are listening and saying, well, if she were this, she would have been treated that way. I don't know where you buy crystal balls like that. I'd love to, so I could bet the Super Bowl in a couple of months. But as far as I'm concerned, at the end of the day, this was a speeding ticket. She was upset. She said some really stupid things, unprofessional things that are completely out of character. If she had a history of this or a character of this, or the Webster chief had called me and says, look, we pull her over all the time and she always gives us crap, and it would have been a completely different ballgame. But people should, understand. Do you really think that she's being treated special and she got some kind of break, when for the rest of her life she'll be, Sandra Doorley, yeah, the woman that tried to, beat the speeding ticket?